Tell me about your approach as a sales leader in forming a team. Who do you look for? Who do you bring in? How do you help nurture people have the right attitude, but might not have the right skills?
Yeah, it's a tough question because there's a book called Sales Dogs, which talks about, in fact, Paul Matucci had turned me onto that at one point. You and I worked for him in the past. And it's a book about the fact that there's not just one profile of a salesperson, just like there's not one type of dog. A Labrador is different from a Chihuahua, and it was that uses that as a metaphor. But I've seen all types of personalities be successful in sales. I think obviously you've got to have a strong work ethic. That's paramount for me, certainly. But fundamentally, going back to this thing I talked about earlier about really understanding whether or not you are solving a problem and really questioning the value of what you're delivering to the customer has two benefits. One is it gets rid of opportunities very quickly that if you don't feel there's you're really solving a problem and there's not enough pain there, to walk away. There's no point to keep pushing the rope up a hill. So that's one thing I've tried to educate the team with, is always be looking for those places where you know that you can solve a problem and you're adding value. And that's a skill set I think that almost is a consultative skill set. Again, it's not about just keeping the pounding on a person and, being belligerent or being persistent. It's about really recognizing, is there a need there? Is there something we can solve? And ultimately sticking with it until you can prove that case well enough that you can get a deal. And so those are the qualities I look for in a person that I'm hiring. I still have to often pull that out of someone if you're meeting them for the first time in 45 minutes. But best way I've found is basically asking that question. Tell me about a deal where, you really knew that you were adding value and you stuck with it and ultimately proved it. And the customer received tremendous benefit from it. I think that,
And the flip side might be a question about, tell me about a deal you're willing to walk away from.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's the other side of it is, and tell me one that you had to walk away from because there wasn't a good fit. And how soon did you make that decision?
And that tells you something about their courage. They're not so desperate for the deal that they're trying to force fit a solution.
Precisely. Right. Yep.